Welcome to the Learn to Play for Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught. Onslaught is a two-player skirmish game that pits players against each other and against monsters in, well, you guessed it, dungeons. Players build parties consisting of characters from factions in the Forgotten Realms lore, and face off against monsters of Forgotten Realms as well. In this Learn to Play, we're going to cover some of the key aspects of the game, including characters, game phases, actions, and more. In addition, the game features a scenario called Clash at the Keep that's a great starting lesson for new players. Players are going to have multiple characters in their parties, and keeping track of them is going to be a breeze with these easy-to-use character cards. Everything you need to know about your character is on this card, including character class to movement, armor, health, your character reactions, their abilities, attacks, and you can also track their experience. Onslaught features a super cool initiative system based on cards. The active player starts with the number 1 card, then shuffles the 2 through 6, dealing 3 to their opponent and 2 to themselves, then shuffles the 7 through 10 cards, dealing 2 to both players. Players then assign initiative cards to their characters with only the number 1 card facing up. Once the initiative phase is complete, players move on to the action phase. There are several actions that your characters can take each round, including 1 standard, 1 move, 1 bonus, and any number of free actions. Certain actions can be traded to gain additional other actions. Sometimes characters have effects that take multiple actions to perform. These actions only do what the effect says and nothing more. Let's talk about movement. Any ability that is a movement is a move action. Moving in Onslaught is based on points. You gain and spend points equal to the character's speed on their card. Each move point can be used to move 1 space orthogonally in any direction. Characters can move through friendly character spaces, but not enemy spaces. Hindering terrain and elevation costs additional points. Characters in Onslaught can spend their standard action to perform attacks. They generally have multiple attacks, including basic attacks and cooldown attacks. Once you've decided who your character attacks, you set your cooldown dial, determine if they're in range, have cover, and in line of sight, then roll your 2d20s. When checking for range, unlike movement, you can count space diagonally. When determining line of sight, draw an invisible line to the target from any corner of the attacker's space to each corner of the target's space. If the line cannot be drawn from one corner of the attacker's space to at least 3 corners of the target space without passing through enemy miniatures, blocking terrain, or an elevation of 2 or more, then the attack or ability cannot be used. Using this same technique, we're now checking for hindering terrain or an elevation of exactly 1. If the invisible line cannot be drawn from any corner of the attacker square to at least 3 corners of the target square, then the target has cover. If the target has cover, only 1 die can be rolled when performing the attack. This does not protect them from area effects or cone attacks. Using the higher roll on the dice, you add your modifier, then compare that number to their AC. If your attack is equal to or higher, you deal the corresponding damage and apply any effects. There are several things you can do in Onslaught that use bonus actions. Some character abilities require bonus actions to be performed, and you'll find that on your character card. One of the key ways of spending your bonus action is to loot chests. You must be next to or overlapping a chest token in order to loot it. Loot tokens are placed face down, and characters use a free action to flip that token and equip the item card. Items have different types, and you can only equip 1 of each type at any time. Also, as a free action, characters can trade face-down loot tokens with other characters. Monsters are a big part of Onslaught and have their own unique rules. All monster groups have their own character cards, and the card is a guide for the entire monster type. This includes each mini of that monster type. Monsters also have their own initiative, and it usually falls in between character initiatives. During their activation, if there is more than 1 monster in a group, you activate the monster closest to the northwest corner of the map. When moving a monster, it moves towards the closest character. If there's a tie between 2 characters from 2 separate parties, it moves towards the active player's character first. When choosing a target, determine all characters that are in range. Then use the scenario to determine which character the monster will attack. If there is a tie, the non-active player chooses the target. Monsters work the same way as character attacks when rolling dice and comparing results. During the end phase, players prepare for the next round. Any effects that trigger at the end of the round are resolved. Reduce your cooldown dials by 1, turning each dial 1 position to the next lowest number. Dials that are on the ready or exhausted icons remain unchanged. Before moving on, advance the round counter and the active player passes the number 1 initiative card to the other player. In Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught, your characters level up over the course of the game by earning experience points. When a character earns their 5th point of experience, they level up. Your characters gain experience in several ways. You gain 1 point for performing an attack that hits 1 or more targets, you gain 1 point for healing themselves or others, gain 1 for looting a chest, and potentially more for any bonus experience they have on their card. There are some key rules to keep in mind when playing Onslaught. Like D&D, critical rolls are important. 1 natural 20 on a roll is an auto success, and most characters have bonuses for critical success rolls. But the success also comes with potential failure. If you roll a natural 1 without a natural 20, the roll automatically fails. If a modifier adds to hit, it doesn't affect the result on the die. But if a modifier adds to the roll, it does affect the result on the roll, and if it adds up to a natural 20 between the die roll and the add to number, that can be a critical success. Another key rule to know is that terrain can affect your character movement, line of sight, and provide cover. There are several types of terrain, and each one is outlined for each campaign. The different types of terrain built into the boards are hindering, blocking, elevation 1, elevation 2, and elevation 3. With blocking terrain, miniatures cannot move into or through a space containing blocking terrain and cannot draw a line of sight through blocking terrain. Hindering terrain costs a miniature 2 move points to enter that space and is considered cover for attacks. Elevation costs 2 move points to enter if the elevation is 1 level higher than the space the mini is currently in. Some scenarios call for other terrain like barriers, doors, and portals. These will all have their own rules as well, and you can find them either in the scenario guide or rules book. Let's talk about how to win the game. There's only 2 ways to win Onslaught. 1, defeat all your opponent's characters, or 2, earn the most victory points. Each scenario in Onslaught has its own ways of earning victory points, so make sure you pay attention in order to defeat your opponent. You are now ready to play Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught. Grab your gear, grab your party, adventure awaits.